welcome back to another episode of Excuse My Baggage. My name is Shayna.
And I'm Paul, also known as Rutgers Mo.
And welcome to the year 2025. So the year just started, and it almost feels like it's Groundhog Day, if you don't get the reference. Groundhog Day is a movie, and basically it's about this guy who relives the same day over and over and over again. So I feel like I'm reliving the same freaking day with this damn podcast. It all started with a goal that I had. I have this list in front of me from goals that I had set in 2024, and goal number 20...
I was number 19.
You were number 19. You made it on my goal list because goal number 19 was... make sure my dad knows that I love him. Very sweet, yeah. So I feel like inadvertently through this podcast, I hope you know that I love you, and just through life and the relationship that we have. I'm really grateful for that. But there are some other goals on this list that I definitely did not accomplish. One of which was goal number 21, Occotonago hike. This was a specific volcano in Guatemala that I've been saying I was going to hike for the last handful of years, and because of my ankle injuries that happened back in September of 2024, I had to adjust my goal because, you know, you can't always do the goals you have set for yourself. Sometimes you have to acclimate, pivot, and I set a new goal. Instead of Occotonago hike, I was going to go to El Salvador and hike a volcano. Long story short, I did that at the very end of December, and I didn't tell my dad about it because I had this brilliant idea that I was going to tell my dad mid-podcast. Surprise! I was gone for the last week hiking a volcano. He was not the happiest, and that recording for the podcast got screwed up. So then we had to redo it again, and then that also got screwed up. So that takes us to why it's Groundhog Day. This is the third time now that we've tried to do this damn episode. Maybe that's a sign from the universe that we needed to just pivot and throw it out the window. You already know I climbed a freaking volcano in El Salvador. Whoop-de-woo. And I hope you know I love you. Goal number 19. So, Groundhog Day. That's kind of how I'm feeling at the moment, Dad. But how are you feeling? What is on your mind at the moment?
Volcanic ash. I'm disappointed in this subject, in the process, in the outcome. Whatever happens, this is what we're rocking and rolling with. This is it.
Yeah.
I'm not doing any more disappointments.
Disappointment comes into play because my original idea of a podcast episode was how to disappoint your parents 101. In life, you're going to disappoint your parents because they have expectations that they want for their children, and typically the kid has their own idea of how they want to live life. That is why I was trying to tell my dad that I hiked a volcano during a podcast episode of how to disappoint your parents, because I have the adventure bug in me. I like to travel. My dad is on the other side of the spectrum where he's like, if you could stay home every day for the rest of your life, I will be happy. That is his viewpoint. I don't live that way. That's fine. So that's where disappointment comes into play. Hello, so this is Shayna, now editing the podcast. I wanted to clarify two things. One, the reason why I still decided to hike a volcano was because the one in El Salvador was significantly less extreme than the one in Guatemala. So instead of a 2-day trek, it was only a couple hours, and the elevation was not that intense. And I also was able to salvage some of the recording from the original podcast where I first told my dad. So if you are watching this on either YouTube or Spotify, then you'll be able to see in this next clip my dad's facial expression of disappointment. I felt bad, but hope you enjoy. I went to El Salvador, and
Of course you did.
I went to El Salvador, and I hiked the tallest volcano in El Salvador, and I had the best week of my life. I went solo, and this was also a very impromptu this was a very impromptu decision on my part.
I'm done with this disappointment. Let's move on.
Okay, a question that I have is kind of on that whole theme of Groundhog Day, which, fun fact, is coming up.
Yeah.
It's coming up
February
at the end
2nd,
of...
right?
Yes.
No. February 2nd.
Something. Is it?
Not the end. Yes, it's February 2nd.
Well, I was going to say end of January, but okay,
no,
February 2nd.
Don't say that. You'll be wrong, and then I'll be disappointed, and so will you.
Okay, well, Groundhog Day is coming up, in which, you know, the whole day the groundhog shows its shadow, and if its shadow shows, then there's more... then it's spring. I don't know. Point is, history repeats itself. Groundhog Day coming up. If there is a day that you could choose to relive over and over again, what day would you choose?
I got nothing.
No day. No day
No
that
day.
you would
No,
do a do-over with.
all days are good as long as you're still alive. This is what's popping in my brain. Over 50 years ago, my first wife and I, Janet, were driving up to a wedding. During the time that we were there, I was playing my accordion. There was other people playing guitar. We had jam sessions. On the way back, we were driving on Highway 101. PCH. At some point, as we were driving, we stopped short. And we was doing about 70 miles an hour or more. And we skidded from the fast lane to the slow lane. There was an on-ramp. And just before the on-ramp, there was a guy changing his tire. We missed him, they said, by less than 5 feet. Can you imagine seeing a car coming to a skidding halt at probably about 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour? We hit the up ramp and then hit the beginning of what was known as ice plant. Thank God for the ice plant.
Yeah.
I was thrown from the car and I went whipping through the ice plant. And it reminded me of the slow motion sequence of Bonnie and Clyde when they got killed. Some people who had seen it called the ambulance. The ER doctor told us that we were lucky as hell. We had no right walking away from that accident, but we did. The reason I'm bringing all of this up is you look at it like the universe. I looked at it like maybe what I was doing was just expressing my feelings about not knowing. Sometimes not knowing anything, it's good just to be quiet. And this one had to do with God, which is, pretty important. Could be why we're all here, the Big Bang, everything else. I still don't understand how that works.
So I'm getting from this is there's not a single day that you would relive again because each day is its own thing. Thanks to God, thanks to the universe, thanks to energy, whatever the hell you want to call it, each day is what it is, and that's what it will be. There's no do-overs, and that's kind of it. Thankfully, you and Janet both survived that accident. That's insanely horrifying. I can't imagine being in the car or being that guy or witnessing the situation.
If we didn't, Brandon and Michelle and you wouldn't be here.
Exactly.
So it's another pivotal moment in someone's life.
Thank you for sharing that. Here we go again with the YOLO bullshit, but live every day to its fullest. The sheer possibility of our existence is miraculous. So many different synchronicities had to happen for me to be existing right now, for you to be existing right now, in this point in time. We didn't ask to be here, but here we are, regardless if that's through God, universe, the great nothingness, who the hell knows? But, we don't get that opportunity to do any do-overs. You got one shot, or maybe you believe in more than one shot, but whatever you believe, that's your belief. But we get one chance to do January 16th, 2025. Tomorrow's a new day, and you have a new opportunity to do whatever the hell you want to do, but you only have one chance of ever doing today. So thank you, actually, for that answer. You didn't answer the question, but you did answer the question at the same time.
Okay. I can live with that.
Well, thanks. That was kind of deep.
Sorry.
But
yeah,
okay.
It's a long way to go for a really shaggy ending, right?
Yeah, well, okay. So no do-overs. Note taken. I guess with that being said, that kind of goes hand in hand with free will. You have the opportunity to take specific risks and make certain decisions in your life. For example, what if you never got in the car that day?
Well, you just stimulated something.
Okay.
Janet passed away 4 years ago. The other person who could have told that story was Janet. But there's another person involved. And the other person is the guy who was changing his tire on the side of the road. And the skid marks...
What's his perspective?
It would have been interesting to hear that some son of a bitch was driving 70 miles an hour and suddenly...
Almost killed me.
Well, and what was really weird about that was, I remember some guy came and he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Is my accordion all right?"
That was your first thought. Not even your girlfriend, not even Janet, the other guy, yourself. It's just, is my accordion?
I didn't
that's
see
your
the
first
other
thought
guy.
when you get into a car accident.
Is my accordion all right? That was something that was really important to me in those days.
Yeah,
but,
priorities. You got your priorities.
Right, but can you imagine cars coming at you? You're changing your tire. His perspective on that whole thing is different too. But he might be saying, like, if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be here today. And that's it. The adventure gene and then the safety gene, those things need to be melded at times.
That kind of makes sense of why you are the way you are in terms of safety versus spontaneity. So my dad and I had this conversation recently about the adventure gene, which I have, and I swear my dad has it too. It's just expressed in different ways. So if you don't know, there is a gene. No, you never know. I mean... I think we both have it, but if not, then I got the adventure gene from mom. So there's a gene that's called the DRD4-7R. Basically, this specific gene is a gene that influences dopamine levels in the brain. So it's associated with curiosity, thrill-seeking, openness to new experiences. Around 20% of the population's supposed to have this gene. And I was telling my dad I got the adventure gene because you have me over here that's like, hell yeah, I'm gonna go hike a volcano in El Salvador, I'm gonna go skydiving. For me, living my best life is synonymous with thrill seeking and doing things that allow me to see life through a unique lens. While that freaks my dad out, I feel like at times where I'm not trying to skydive without a parachute, I'm not that stupid. Sometimes I like to go on adventures and see the world through a cool lens.
Did you hang on 1 second? Did you get the video clip I sent you of the Great Wallenda?
No, what is this? Okay.
He had the adventure gene and eventually
died?
He died.
We're all gonna, that's the thing. Is this the guy that did a tightrope walk between
absolutely.
buildings and then here's the thing. I'm not trying to do anything that extreme, but as we've discussed before, I was walking on flat ground and I sprained an ankle. You could get injured, you could die, you could experience something tragic through doing the most mundane, simple thing. Everything is a risk. I think you do need to take some calculated risks in life and have precaution because you do want to set yourself up for a healthy, happy life and try not to injure yourself or injure others along the way. But you need to sometimes take chances and make mistakes because that's how you grow. You're not going to grow from your comfort zone. You're going to grow when you aren't held back by the fear of failure or the fear of fear itself. So that's kind of where, I don't know, this whole ramble about the adventure gene. I have the adventure gene. I think you've been through some experiences in life that maybe have caused you to mutate the gene and be like, let's be a little bit more cautious. I was in a car accident and my accordion survived, but now let's play it safe.
There was another time when I was being adventurous.
Which story is this? Is this your...
This is the 40 hippies dropping acid on the day when the moon was being landed on for the first time, June of 1969. Actually, I'm sorry, July.
Drugs are risky.
July.
Drugs are risky.
So you might not have the adventure gene. It might just be the little bit of acid that was left over.
Maybe that I could
microdose.
It's still in my DNA. Thankfully, I haven't done drugs, but you, sir, you have done your fair share of drugs in your days, and that I think has probably mutated your DNA to some extent. Therefore, it was passed down to me, and I'm the way. Wow, did you just see that correlation? If you never dropped acid, I wouldn't have hiked a volcano in El Salvador.
That's a hell of a comment.
So,
and not only that, just if I hadn't done acid, I would look a lot better for a guy who's 45. It was pretty much bizarre. We had 40 people who were dropping acid. When I started coming on, that's actually experiencing whatever drug you're taking. There was a metal fence, and it felt like I was in a concentration camp. So my paranoia was kicking in. And there was a drummer in our group who was kind of unusual, and he wound up holding dead pelican. This, I mean, I can see it. I can actually see it, which is kind of unfortunate. But
sorry to make you, in a sense, Groundhog Day and relive this memory all over again. But
I'm not sure even how we got into it. But
proceed.
But he was French kissing this dead pelican. I mean, it was pretty bizarre. And police came at some point, and they were shining lights in our eyes. So our eyes were dilated normally, by taking the drug. Now they were really dilated. Luckily, these guys must have been pretty cool. They didn't do anything. As we were walking down, this is Palos Verdes, and it was very steep. We were trying to get down to the beach, and I was walking closer and closer to the edge or the precipice of the walkway, and most of the people there were saying, leave him alone, he's fine. But my friend Ray, who was the lead singer in our group, kept saying, no, man. And he took my hand and had me come back to the middle of the road. Notice that there's a trend here.
What is the trend?
The trend was the almost fatal car crash and then the almost fatal dropping off at Palos Verdes. I don't know. I think I could be suicidal, but hopefully not. So in either case, I'm not even sure what the moral of this particular episode is, other than I was just sharing with you an adventure, and it's a risk. And I would suggest to you that, knowing better, I would never do that again. On the other hand, everything that you do can be plotted out like cost benefit. How much does it cost? Not financially, but emotionally, physically. Who's going to be affected by this? It's not just you.
There's 9 billion plus people alive on Earth, and our actions have consequences. And they don't just affect you, it affects the other people in your life. Let's just go back to the car incident. Not only were you and your life on the line, but Janet's life was on the line. The guy who was changing his car tire, his life was on the line. Everyone who's on the road. I feel like a good way to think is knowing that you have the power to affect the people around you, whether that's good or that's bad. In terms of risk or cost benefit analysis, when you are having that free will to make certain decisions, it's, will this decision benefit not only me, but will this help other people too? Or will this harm other people and myself, you know? That conversation, I feel like it's really deep.
Most people I don't think that way.
I think that people should.
Maybe they should do a lot of things, but I think what happens is you're along for the ride. You're a lemming. There's social pressures. Yeah. And so the social pressures are you going to have a drink? You're going to do a drug? You're going to do this? You're going to do that?
I guess to wrap things up regarding your drug episode of...
Well, that was the big one. That was a big
risk that you took, and thankfully it was stupid. But... you survived, and thankfully you had a friend who was looking out for you. Do not do drugs. Try to protect your mental sanity. But thankfully, I mean, hey, you tried something. You lived to tell the tale. But not everyone is that lucky. There's people who drop acid and then die.
They drop out.
And worse thing. Yeah, they drop. There's worse things, you know.
I've told you about someone named Art Linkletter, which, again, the sole listener can look up. Mm-hmm. But the reality was Art Linkletter was very popular on TV. That was a box that people used to watch before computers. In either case, his daughter wound up taking acid and jumping out of a window and dying. And he was very famous. And he was on a show called People Are Funny. That's not funny, but...
No,
it's not.
It's not funny.
And if you're a parent, it's tragic.
Yeah.
You know, and even if... Had she survived, nobody knows what kind of state she would have been in. And some people who survived didn't jump out of windows, but they mentally may have lost it. They go down another path. Yeah. Not everybody who does it winds up becoming damaged. But how do you know?
You don't.
How do you know what's going to happen?
It's a risk. It's a risk. And I think some people maybe aren't thinking of they're just not thinking. They're just going with the flow, as you said, and along for the ride. But not saying that, not saying that it's a day-to-day occurrence for you or for me to be offered drugs. I'm just trying to close this little conversation here, but that's not a typical part of my day. I don't wake up.
In other words, if you get a coupon to go walk in Guatemala, you're not going to be off and running immediately.
What do you mean?
You just...
I would, do we need to go back to my list? Goal number 21 is Acatanago hike. That is a specific volcano in Guatemala. I would like to do this 2-day trek. Adventure is my drug. It's my drug of choice. While some people drop acid, while some people are alcoholics, I crave a good adventure. I crave a good hike. Not talking about tightrope walking between buildings. I'm talking, let me go on a hike to see a volcano.
I can't stop
on a volcano. I know, you can't. And
not yet.
However, well, no. If I'm not meant for this experience, it won't happen. I do understand that sometimes you got to pivot. You're not going to be able to accomplish every goal you have set for yourself, and you shouldn't. I think that's interesting because I try to be a woman of my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. If I set a goal for myself, I am going to do what I need to do to achieve it. And while that's great, sometimes there are goals that you need to change.
What if your goal was to get me to walk on this Acatanago or whatever it is? Your goal is to get me to walk on Acatanago. My goal is I ain't going.
Circling back, I did have a goal. Let's see. Where is this?
7.
Goal number 4.
Oh, it's close.
Run the Long Beach Half Marathon in October 2024 and have my dad and Connie visit. As we've discussed before, I had a goal. Number 4 on the list was to run a half marathon, and I wanted you and Connie, your girlfriend, there to watch this happen. 1, I couldn't run the half marathon because I had ankle injuries. 2, I couldn't get you on a plane because you don't like traveling. You don't like leaving the house. And I just had to accept that. So my goal changed, and that's why we have this podcast. That is literally why.
But I changed
What?
because from 2012 through 2019, I was essentially coming down to Southern California every other month.
Yeah. So you
So
changed.
So that's right. And some of that had to do with
Life.
Life, right. Getting older, whatever, all those things.
So that's where you have to adapt. I'll say this. I'm 26. Hope that tomorrow doesn't become the day where I decide to become Shayna who doesn't leave the house ever. I hope that sometime in the next year I can hike Acatanago in Guatemala. So if someone does happen to say, hey Shayna, want to go to Guatemala to hike a volcano? You know what? That's the whole thing, Dad. I don't need someone to come up and ask me to go with them to Guatemala. I'll do it myself. Part of the reason I went to El Salvador is I did a solo trip. So I went for 1 week by myself and I had a great time where I got to hike a volcano. I met people from around the world and I just had a great time, and it really proved to myself that like I have the confidence and I have the capability to step out of my comfort zone, because traveling solo isn't something where I'm like, oh yeah, piece of cake. It is something that's a little bit more challenging. And so to be able to say that I didn't necessarily accomplish the Acatanago hike, but I did go to El Salvador solo. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I proved to myself that as a 26-year-old woman who still hopefully, knock on computer, has a lot more life left to live, that I was able to take a calculated risk to travel solo, and I'm grateful that I did.
Sometimes it's a good idea to take
experience.
Sometimes it's a good to recognize where you are, be grateful, and take a win. You walked on a volcano, you went by yourself, nothing happened that was negative. That's a win. Don't keep pushing the envelope. That's my advice to you.
Volcano I need to hike.
No,
Yes.
don't do it.
Oh, well, we're going to end that here, because this is going to go on a Groundhog Day again of, I'm going to hike a volcano, Dad. No, you're not going to hike a volcano, Shayna. Yes, I am. No, you're not. Yes, I am. No, you're not. And it's going to go in a loop until 2029. But the whole point of that is sometimes you're not going to accomplish every goal you have set for yourself, and that is okay. So I guess question, is there a goal in your life that you maybe had for a long time that you never got to accomplish?
I'd like to see you settled in a relationship where you're comfortable.
No. That was goal number 6. Be in a happy, healthy relationship. That is still pending. First and foremost, I think, if I'm therapying myself at the moment, you have the relationship that you have with yourself, and that is the most important relationship I think you'll ever have in your entire life. You are with you day in and day out until the day that you no longer exist. However, it would be nice to have a companion, to have a boyfriend, to be in a marriage, to have my own family someday. And no rush. But it's been a goal of mine for a long time, and I've been very intentional with my dating of I would like to find someone that
That's
that's disappointing. The true disappointment's my dating life.
I would suggest that you need to modify your selection process. You need to try other things, whether that's the dinner for 12 that we talked about. Why is this thing
I know, I was just going to say your headphones are falling off.
Right. I would just hope that you would think about that and maybe perhaps try some other options.
We'll see if 2025 is the year that I accomplish my goal of healthy, happy relationship. But I know that takes time, and part of it's luck. As you like to say, if you want to win the lottery, you have to buy a ticket. Dating in the 21st century, is interesting because a lot of people use the dating apps. I use the dating apps. And I have this mentality of, if you want to win the lottery, if you want to find your person, you got to buy the ticket, or you gotta just keep on swiping. So who knows if I do meet my person out in the wild? Who knows if I already know the person? I don't know, but I do know I have free will and that I also have a selection. It's a selection where hopefully, universe willing, I do meet someone that I like as much as they like me, and we'll go from there, This all stemmed from the goal that you had for yourself that you've never accomplished. And you relayed that back to me in terms of a goal that What? You just didn't answer the question. The last question I have for you is, imagine this. It's 2028, and you've just become the first person to land on Mars and summit Olympus Mons, the tallest volcano in the solar system. What is the first thing you say when you reach the top?
Shayna, what the hell are you doing here? Because I know you. I got to go solo. I walked 15 other volcanoes, so you somehow blasted off and you're at Mars.
So
why are you there?
You're not the first person then. You're the second person because I was the first person.
Of course, you have the adventure gene.
I have the event, and you do too, Dad.
Yeah.
We both have the adventure gene. So ending on that note, thank you for passing the adventure gene along. Thank you for my existence. It's another year, so hopefully no more Groundhog Days, and hopefully 2025 will be a beautiful year for us. So I love you, Dad, and we will make
Love
it a
you
good
too.
year. I love you a
Bye.
lot. Bye.